None of this is broadcastable, okay? None of it. None of this is broadcastable.
Cut.
Hello everyone, welcome to another, I can't stop doing the John McCurrick thing, it's like that. Welcome to a Talking About special. This is to celebrate, look, I'm going to reach down, I've got a pop. Oh look, it's the season 17 collection on Blu-ray, lovely. I am Paula P-Bal and I am joined by somebody, I'm hoping.
Hello, it's Ben.
Yay! Yay! Hello, it's Jason.
And hello, it's James.
What I love there was the triumph of Ben getting the camera, and as soon as it got there, Clifford was in.
What a hog. What a hog.
No, I was just naturally doing my introduction as I always do.
Sure, sure.
Stealing the camera away from everybody else.
So, I mean, we haven't long discussed Doctor Who in the season 17. What have we been thinking about watching it again on Blu-ray? Actually, first point I can say, because I always like to start these things on a positive note. I haven't got anything much happy to say in my life. We all love this packaging, don't we?
Yes.
Bloody thing has fallen apart already. It's been about a freaking week. Look at it.
That's not good. That's not good.
Look at the cheapo glue dots. 43 pounds these things cost you. Does it stick together? Does it buffalo? Is that why it's not sold out? Yes, because everyone's waiting for the Amaray case because it is a lot smaller and a lot hardier.
Oh, I wonder how many people are reinvesting in the Amaray cases now. I think quite a few.
I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because I get that they want it to be an event thing, but it is a little bit like when they did series 1 of Doctor Who in that giant fold-out TARDIS.
Horrible.
The number of times I sellotaped that, super. Every time you opened it up, they all fell in the middle. It was so nice until I opened the packaging. It all went horribly wrong.
If anyone has got one of those still intact, send us a picture of it. I mean, it's like it warped. Mine warped badly and collapsed.
And your boxer.
Rude.
It's interesting because I think this box set and the last one, they haven't sold out in advance, actually, because it was always the scramble and the fear, wasn't it? Everyone had the kind of, I ordered it from Zavi, and then all of a sudden you'd get an email a week later saying, we can't fulfill your order, good luck. Whereas now I think people are a little bit more kind of understanding, actually, this isn't the only time you'll be able to get this, and it will come out repackaged.
But do you think the risk of that now is that people are going to go, oh, they're going to re-release it, so I won't bother to buy this first version? And then if enough people don't do that, are they going to, do you think they've sort of peaked too soon by doing these other sets?
Yeah, I think they've possibly brought the Armories out probably a little too soon, because I think it's taken some of the special away from the boxes, I feel. I mean, the boxes are very, very nice, but they do take up quite, I never thought they would do, but they're now starting to take quite a bit of space, and the Armory cases don't. They're kind of like half the width, aren't they, again? I mean, Christ, we used to have bloody 6 or 7 DVDs per season on the shelf that were about that big, wouldn't they? So, you know, we're getting smaller and smaller with it. But no, I think you've got the collectors are now falling into two different camps. They either want to collect the box, the very nice fancy box sets, or they want to collect the Armories, and that's possibly why the sales are dropping off, maybe on the boxes.
I suppose also the difficult thing is if you missed a couple of the early ones before they were deleted and went incredibly expensive, you were then, well, what's the point in collecting the rest of these? Because I'm not going to have a set that looks good, and you probably then think, well, I've only got, you know, the 4th and 5th releases. I'll ditch those and just go with the slimmer versions that come out. I'm not that desperate to see the extras. I suppose we should discuss the extras. I suppose the biggest selling point, look, that was a natural. The extras are what sells these, aren't they? I think that's essentially what people are getting them for. So the first extra, I suppose, that we get, the big extra is the Destiny making of.
Yeah, I think that is the first one, and I think it sheds some really nice new light on the production of Destiny. And I've got to say, I learned a few things about this. I didn't realize the location was quite so close to the coastline, the sort of quarry area that they were in. So, you're right on the edge there. I could see that filming wouldn't have been easy for them at all.
Yeah, I've actually been there, down to Winspit Quarry, and it's an amazing place. But the thing is that it's actually really quite difficult to get to, because you sort of have to come in and into a car park, and then you have to sort of trek all the way down through these fields. And when myself and a couple of others went to see it, by the time it was sometime in the summer, and then by the time we'd finished looking around and taking pictures and so forth, it was starting to get dark. As we were going back up, and it was getting sort of quite dark at that point, this field, which we saw some cows and so forth in beforehand, as we were coming back up, these cows suddenly blocked the path, and all you could see was their eyes looking, and it suddenly just resembled like, oh my God, this is like, are we going to get killed by these killer cows just sort of standing there, just watching us like, you're not going to pass, you're stuck here forever. And luckily they moved, get it? Moo.
Oh,
there you go.
And we're okay, so there you go. That's just my little bit of...
He's brought his own puns.
Yeah.
He's starting to get used to doing these with us, isn't he?
Yeah, of course, I have to join in. But for anyone who's never been there, it's amazing. It's one of those places where it still looks pretty much like the same place. It's hardly changed at all, and it's really nice. And they used a little bit of it for Underwater Menace as well. So yeah, it's nice.
I sort of I'm always very wary with these things, that a lot comes down to the perils of producer and what you would like to do and what you can get to do. Because watching the documentary, I was mindful there were quite a few people that are still with us that aren't on the documentary, and I get completely. As awful as it sounds, when people say to me, "Have you thought of inviting X to a convention?" I can usually guarantee, except if Ben's asking about the third thumping on the right from The Mind of Evil, generally speaking, I will have at least considered them at some point, or asked them, or spoken to them, so I end up with that kind of ratio of knowing who's got dementia, who's in a care home, who can only travel on a Thursday week, and that sort of carries with you. So I watched this documentary thinking, well, God, we haven't got Peter Straker, we haven't got Suzanne Danielle, and you kind of, and I get that you would obviously have asked all of these people, and you would have invariably got I'm afraid Miss Danielle can only do Thursday afternoon between 1 and 1:30. Is that all right for you? All that sort of stuff. But I felt it's slightly like there were certain key people that it would have been nice to have heard from on the documentary that aren't represented, I don't think, anywhere else on the disc either.
Do you think that's partly pandemic related as well, because because of the dynamics of being able to get people to places to record?
Peter Straker went to London Film Convention. He could get that. He could get in front of a camera for half hour, I'm sure. No, it is what, and I know they had trouble because they wanted Lalla to be more involved in it. She wasn't keen on doing it, so you get a lot of footage from her 20 years ago that sort of dropped into various things, and you get to hear her voice. But yeah, no, that's not to criticise the documentary. I think it does the job that it's there for. It does the making of job, which great. It's just that kind of thing. If you think, oh, it's a bit of a shame that, because the other new feature for Destiny is the Tom commentaries. If anyone listened to the Tom commentaries on this?
No.
You have to be terribly brave to do it. It's interesting, and again, I can understand the perils of it immeasurably. Toby gets a one-on-one with Tom Baker for parts 1 and parts 4. And you realise quite early doors that Tom is either not wanting to do this or isn't quite able to do this. And I don't know where it stands. And I feel for Toby. I genuinely feel, because he is peddling like Fook to keep this working. Mm-hmm. And Tom, within the first couple of minutes, says, "Oh, is this my first story, or is this one of my first?" And it's like, that's Lalla. You do you know how this rolls. You know there were others. You know, this is quite a way on, and you can tell. And Tom sort of, and again, I'm not going to be critical of Tom because he's 84, is he 83? He's mid 80s. So Christ on a bike is a miracle, but he's still happy to come and do this stuff. But the anecdoting, it feels kind of not automated, because that's an unkind thing to say. I wouldn't say that. But those two commentaries, I genuinely felt for Toby, because Tom wasn't engaging with the material. And I think, again, a pandemic situation, I think if he was in the room with someone or he had another actor with him, he would engage more. But I suspect doing it on the cams down the thing, he's not going to really engage with Destiny of the Daleks.
But then I love the Tom talks, or I watched that and I was absolutely captivated by it. And what I love is they I think it's Matthew Sweet again, isn't it, doing the interview, but they've sort of cut the questions out, so it's just Tom being prompted, but it feels more like a reminiscence. And there are times when he sort of goes wandering, into his past and his childhood, and talking about sort of the impact of religion when he was growing up. And then, you've got then an anecdote about Blackadder when he was in it, and Rowan Atkinson. But then you've got these like peppered comments where he says, "Oh, I'm probably not going to be around for much longer." And I was sat there going, "Don't say that, don't." I know that.
He's been saying that since like 1995. Tom has been dining out on "I'm going to die soon" for about 30 years now.
I know he's got another sort of like 20 seasons of Big Finish in the can, especially during the pandemic. They've been getting him to do loads of recording. But there is something really, like I say, captivating around that documentary of just watching him talk, reminisce. He goes down one path, then he kind of, like you were saying, he kind of sort of drifts a bit, then he comes back, and then he's talking about something else. And I really loved that. I really, as soon as I finished watching it, I felt, if that was like the last interview that he did, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case, but he was kind of saying that, that he ends it by saying that he's outlived a lot of people, and that he felt quite happy about that. So I think there's just a lovely quality to that.
It was a cheeky ending, really, though. In
it
many
was,
respects. And it's typically a typical Tom ending. I was glad the way they edited that, because obviously we've had a Matthew Sweet sort of interview with Tom already. So to turn this into almost just really featuring Tom and letting Tom talk, exactly as the title says, but letting him talk through some of his anecdotes. And there was things that I'd not heard before. And the Blackadder story in particular, as you've already said, was so funny, about the reminiscence on that. And, Tom, we all know Tom well enough to know that he's going to be putting a little edge on that story as well. It's going to be a little bit sort of Tomized, if you like. But I came out of that very similar to you, I think, James, by thinking, that was just such an effortless sort of hour, or 45 minutes hour. It was just like, I could have just sat and watched another hour of Tom just reminiscing and going through even more of his anecdotes and stories, I think.
Yeah, Tom, I mean, we all love Tom. Tom is a national treasure, and you can never have enough of Tom, really. And the fact that obviously he's got 7 series, so we're going to have a lot of different stuff on all these box sets. So to have something like that, just a bit different, and just to go off on a bit of a tangent and talk about stuff which isn't the normal sort of stuff, is great. I mean, it was even good on his very first box set to have the Tom Baker years stuck on there on the Sontaran Experiment disc, because and it was funny to again watch that, because some of those ones, such as Genesis of the Daleks, and they just showed him the clip with him with John Franklin Robinson at the beginning, and he just thought, I don't know what this is. And everyone's going, how can you not remember that? But it's just because of the clip that they showed. So sometimes him sort of reacting to those sort of things is nice, and it changes it. But as you say, with something like the commentary for Destiny, obviously, because I remember reading about it beforehand, and Toby just said, well, you know, he just sort of goes off on his own sort of thing, and we just talk about other things. So even if he doesn't talk about what's on screen, it's Tom, you know, we love to hear whatever he says, really.
Yeah, I agree to an extent. I don't know whether I entirely the Tom on the commentary, but have a listen, folks. The Tom on the Destiny commentary, I found it slightly difficult because knowing as people get to a certain age how well engaged they are, and I'm not besmirching or casting anything here, but it didn't have that kind of plummy madness, I suppose that's what I'm going to call it, plummy madness you usually get with Tom, even if he knows what's on screen and he's just batting it back for fun. It felt not uncommon. It felt a difficult haul, but I mean, he livens up a little bit more for the City of Death commentary. But by the same token, again, it is a bit more of a, and who's this? Are they still alive? And who's this? And are they still alive? That's all he kind of wants to know. And you know, do they still work? Are they still alive? But I mean, I don't know whether I'm some kind of connoisseur of the commentary world here, but City of Death on the disc, you get three commentaries. I mean, none as fine as the Who talk, obviously.
I wonder, did they do the Lalla, and did they do the Lalla one when she was over for the last Utopia she was at?
It was done literally just before she went to Hong Kong. They flew Hong Kong, and they flew Catherine over specially to do that commentary track. But great, and again, this is, and it all comes down to personal taste. I know some people like a commentary without a moderator, so you do actually get that, because I think the original is David Graham, Michael Hayes, and Julian Glover, maybe.
Yeah,
and they sort of amble their way through it, you know. But when we do them, our approach, and I think the approach that works best, is if you keep chopping the lineups. If you have the same people for the same story all the way through, you've got to be bloody good to get away with it. And that's, again, it sounds like I'm being a horrendous bitch, and I'm not, but 4 episodes with Matthew Sweet, Catherine, and Lalla, it's a slog, because at the end of the day, when it's a show you watched 40 years ago and you're sat in the same thing for an hour and a half with the same 2 people, there's only going to be so much reaction or remembrance you'll get from it. And it's difficult, because and it depends how good you are on being a commentator, and some people can naturally be a commentator. I'm, you know, just pulling examples. Katie knows what she's got to do on a commentary. Sophie knows what she's got to do on a commentary. You know, Catherine is great. She's a fantastic writer. She's fantastic to interview and stuff. But on the commentary track, she I don't know whether she's quite sure what she's doing. And so it's you know, and it's not like Catherine and Lalla are great friends and still see each other, and there's an amazing camaraderie there. It's just a sort of, it felt, I would have been happier, I think. They'd spent the money flying Catherine over as they did. Get us together Julian for half an hour, do a documentary with the Scarleones. That'd have been magical to see that. It's the sort of, I think it's because they wanted Lalla involved in it in some way.
Yeah.
They saw that as being the thing, but then they also got Tom to do it. So it's kind of like, well, why not just get Lalla to do 2 episodes that Tom didn't do, and, you know, just have the 2 tracks. It felt like a lot of resource went into little reward, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I could be wrong. I might love and enjoy them.
I do like the thought of At Home with the Scarleones. Now, that would have been a great extra.
That would have been up with the Scarleones.
Well, they do the doctor's table thing, don't they? Where they give them a nice meal and chat to them. Julian and Catherine would have loved a meal with wine and a chat. That would have been exactly what
a glass of wine.
That would have brought the best out of both of them. That would have been amazing. They could have had David Graham bring the wine out or something. It'd have been great. Tom Chaplin. I mean, honestly, you could have. I get that you're not going to get Tom. It's the elephant in the room, isn't it? You're not going to have Tom and Lalla sat next to each other watching season 17 going, do you remember that? We had a right go around the set and that. But you can get the City of Death and the main cast. You could have got those together for I think that would have been a nice feature. And
could you imagine those two doing Behind the Sofa together?
They'd have the plastic screen though, wouldn't they?
And talking of the Behind the Sofas, they are the standout features though of these.
I love that. Some people deride them, but that's the first thing I want to watch is the Behind the Sofas.
They are actually they are the thing you go to first. They are the go-to watch that you want to see who's on them to start with and what the sort of comments are. And I think, June Hudson was just so fabulous on this run of the 6 that are on this 6, 7 that are on this release. And the one I had difficulty watching though throughout all of these is I just could not watch Matthew Waterhouse. He was doing my head in pretty much in all of them.
He was such a I don't want to be too mean, but he was quite a bitch. He was like, what's Romana wearing in this episode? And and it was just like, why? What, Colin was just Colin. He was just sat there going, oh yeah, this is happening now, and this is quite good. And he was just like, oh, I don't like that outfit. Don't know what she's wearing. It was quite catty. Some of the comments, and I think, especially when you've got Creature from the Pit in the mix of these things, there's going to be some comments around design and things that worked and things that didn't work. And you're right with June and her panel with Graham and with Matt, there was an acknowledgement that some things weren't as good as they could have been, but they talked about it and why it might have been like that. Whereas I felt sometimes Matthew was just like, well, that's rubbish, that looks awful, and you're like, well, I don't know. I did struggle with that, whereas you've got like Katie and Nicola who are just like, oh, it's Doctor Who, it's lovely and it's brilliant, we love it, and yes, that worked and that didn't work, but we find it funny. Whereas he was quite, I don't know whether he was trying to take it too seriously as a critique or not, but it just felt odd.
I think they might have hoped that Matthew would give the Lalla sort of stuff that they do. I think Colin was very firm as soon as it started. Oh, look, it's Lalla. I really like Lalla. It's kind of like, whoa, okay. That is literally that was the classiest way of just saying don't. I know this situation is not going to happen. I'm probably I would. What do you like about the Behind the Sofa? Because I find them too long and unsatisfactory.
I think particularly with this one, because we have recently reviewed season 17, so it was nice to just see their reaction to the episodes rather than watching the episodes again. I just find them fun and easy to watch, and because they're just half an hour, you can just in an evening you can watch a couple of them, and you don't have to invest too much in it. I think sometimes it really depends on the pairings or the groupings. Some are better than others, but there is an element that a lot of them haven't watched these episodes or haven't watched them for a long time, so you're kind of seeing it through their eyes. Whereas we might have watched the episode 100 times and critiqued it already, you're seeing it through someone else's eyes who's going, oh, why did that happen? Or look at that.
But if you think about it in June's, I'll take June's approach to this, because I as I said, I really appreciated her input into these Behind the Sofas. She talked about each of the different costumes that she designed for Lalla through the season. And she talks with such affection about her time on the show. She clearly loves Tom and enjoyed all of what she did. And she talks about the costumes with such a. I've listened to her on panels, and we've met her many times, but there's still something about the way that June talks about her time on the show that I think fills me with a huge amount of a big love, I've got to say. And it was kind of nice because it was almost definitely like a nice behind the scenes one there. I like these because I get, like you, James, just that little bit of an insight. We can watch them and have our own opinions, but it's kind of nice to hear their opinions of some of what they're watching. I mean, some of them haven't worked across the boxes, I'll admit. And I think, again, it depends on who you've got, and it's the mix of the panels. You know, the Colin one was working because I think Colin took control of it. I definitely liked the, you know, Katie's was good with Nicola. You know, Nicola got quite upset there towards the end of Shada. She was quite sort of like, oh, you know, Tom, and that came as a nice bit of a surprise. I don't know. It's just a nice twist on. We watch it. We've got our own opinions. It's nice to hear what they've got to say about it, I think.
There are lots of kind of just honky bits which don't need to be like Nicola going, I hope we see what these monsters look like in Shada. Well, we know that there's footage of them, and if they don't show them that clip, why draw attention to the fact that you've not shown them that clip? What's the point of that being? Do you know what I mean? Just little things like really get on my tits. Graham Harper says, "Oh, love that actor used to be really famous in Boone, and he's sadly no longer with us." David Dacre's not dead. You've just passed him off. He's still alive. People should when they're putting these things together should be going, we better just double check David Dacre, and he's not dead. So now anyone watching this will be thinking, oh, it's a shame. Old Irongron's not with us. It's kind of, there are little bits within it, and I just feel sometimes, especially like again, there's a bit in Shada where Victoria Burgoyne turns up, and they're like, "Oh, look, we can now see her, and she's not animated." Well, she was not animated earlier on. It's just drawing attention to the material that they're not showing them. So, and I get that they're not going to sit and watch all 6 episodes of Shada and the TV version and the video. You know, I get that. That's absolutely understandable. But it seems odd to put things into the final edit that reference the fact that you've making them look like they've not paid attention. Because I mean, not everyone's going to understand that they've not sat through the whole of the Horns of Nimon or something. So, to me, I just feel if they were a little tighter, a few more setups, it would be a great extra. I suppose it's just I suppose fans like the fact that it's a little bit like they're doing what I do, and that's lovely. And you know, Katie Manning's not necessarily going to go home and put Nightmare of Eden on through choice, is she? But that said, I do think this run of them, I think I like the setups, and I liked, even though, I mean, bless him, Graham's got bugger all to do season 17. I like the fact that he was there with June and Matt because it's a BBC thing and they all understand the BBC and how it works to make programmes. That's a nice setup. And it was nice to have Nicola and Kate. Lovely not to have the bitterness of Davison and the misery of Janet. But these things, it's, you know, they rise and fall. And as a whole, I think some of Matthew's slight strangeness aside, they were quite positive, and I think it rolled. But it's a slightly strange feature, and I do feel it could be better.
It doesn't work as well with the screens, I've got to be honest. I much prefer them being actually on a sofa. I'm being very pedantic there.
You don't want to get COVID, lovey, though, do you? Imagine all of a sudden Adric spits at Dr. Who and he's in hospital for half a day. Well, what other special features are we? I think there's the Douglas Adams documentary on this.
Oh, that was so wonderfully done. And I've got I probably didn't know as much about Douglas Adams as I thought I did, but I thought it was a very touching way they approached that. And you know, having David Lloyd on there, and it was very, very clearly a tribute, and came across really, really nice.
I love the mixture of the archive clips and interviews that he had given, and then there was the personal anecdotes of people that, like you say, you know, the cast and people that have worked with him. It was, and they sort of talked about his sort of rise to fame, because they were talking about him doing Doctor Who, but then the Hitchhiker's Guide, and then what, you know, the potential that was there before he passed away. And I felt it was beautifully made. It was very well sort of put together. Like I said, a mix of different things and archive clips, and I just thought it was a really nice tribute. And there were things in that I didn't know about him. So it was really interesting watching it and seeing how his career had progressed and the people that he'd worked with along the way and the people he'd helped with their career as well, and other people that had an input into his. So I thought it was really nice.
I feel like I'm like the arbiter of awfulness here. I liked the start. I felt it wandered off for about 25 minutes just to talk about Doctor Who in order of story, just because we had to talk about Doctor Who in order of story because it's a Doctor Who disc. It then felt like it wasn't a Douglas Adams documentary about him. More, it's about Douglas Adams, Doctor Who, and then we're back to Douglas Adams. And there was that kind of, it kind of felt like once he'd left Doctor Who, they rushed to him dying. And that's a horrible thing, but it felt like actually he had 12 years after Doctor Who, where he was actively doing much more exciting things, much more popular things. And you got the friends who weren't connected to Doctor Who and the colleagues, and thought that was nice. And I thought that it was nice because obviously Lalla sort of made the reference about their personal relationship, and that was all nice and sort of deep. But it then felt that you'd also had to sort of shoehorn bits about City of Death and stuff in there, and killing people in Paris, and it's just like that's got bugger all to do with sort of Douglas Adams. You've kind of got the way in to do an interview with her because she says you'll talk about Douglas, and now you're putting bits of Doctor Who into it that doesn't really sit in a documentary about Douglas. That's about Doctor Who, not him.
Mm.
I love the anecdote about the au pairs out that the think isn't it crazy 64 identical. It's like that literally shows why season 17 is good and season 18 is literal and bland in that one moment, and Bidmead himself is the one explaining it, and I love that. And did you enjoy the documentary on Douglas?
Yeah. The thing about it is that for someone like Douglas, who died, 2001, I think it was. So there's not a lot of footage of him, and obviously I think he died before they started doing these documentaries for the DVDs. So all they really had is old footage. So it's just a case of sort of, culling all the best bits together and getting the talking heads and chatting about it. So yeah, I think that they did a good enough job with what they had, really, because of the fact that it's drawing on stuff that's difficult to find, really.
I did like the Easter egg. I know we've seen it before, but the Easter egg where he talks about the trip to Paris, and they get drunk and they're out drinking, and then they're talking about going to West Berlin to have a drink, and they can't get a plane out the airport. That story cracks me up.
It's such a good story, the way he tells it, and he's like, and then we rocked up at first thing in the morning at BBC Centre. Just like, we want to go to a bar. Where do you want to go? Let's go to West Berlin, because there's still one open there. I think that's brilliant. And then you get, the other sort of piece on here is the Bob Baker one, which has that horrible line of, you're the last man standing. And then obviously he did pass away. That's the line that Matthew Sweet uses. It's like, you're one of the last people left from that classic era. And of course this, was filmed sometime before he sadly passed away in November last year.
They couldn't have filmed it after, could they? Come on, let's be honest.
But it wasn't that long after they recorded that he passed away. That's what
it was quite soon. Yeah.
It is a lovely interview. The only thing I think that spoil I've got to put a downer on it. The only thing is that slight strange bit at the end where they take the canine prop to meet the grommet prop, and it's just like it's really weird because you have a really good interview, and he's really good. He's on top form. Bob is talking through different things, and it's lovely. But it's just then it's stop, and you just end it with Matthew Sweet sort of making strange references to K9's eye coming out and it being forward, and it all gets a bit carry on and a bit kind of like, oh, this could have ended. I think this could have ended quite nicely with thank you very much, Bob Baker, and to credits. The K9 thing, K9 meeting Gromit was a bit like, I don't know if I.
It was almost we're in Aardman Studios. We've got to make the best use we possibly can of being in Aardman Studios. So let's see if we can tack this really awful bit on the back end of it. And I was really shocked because there was this the voice of K9 was there, and I was thinking
it was John Leeson.
And I could not believe it that it was John actually that voiced. And I'm afraid I just don't know if there was something not right in the edit, but it just didn't sound like John to me, unfortunately.
No, I was literally the same. When it got to the K9 voice, I was like, oh, bloody hell, I couldn't even ask John Leeson to do the voice. And then the credits came up, and I was like, oh.
That's because he probably recorded it at home in his kitchen or something.
It could have been John's wife. They might have got the wrong person on the phone.
We got a sound alike, and then they just accidentally credited John.
But actually, that sort of leads, one of my favourite, strangely, extras on here is there's a tiny snippet from BBC Choice. We all remember BBC Choice, don't we? And it's David Brierley being interviewed, because you don't get a lot of David Brierley interview or anything anywhere else, do you? So it's quite interesting to see. I mean, bloody cheap digital BBC stuff, but it's really nice to see him interviewed, and he's terribly theatrical. But it's that interesting of seeing another K9 actor talking about it. Not not the way Border John, but it's just interesting because you sometimes forget. I think his one season as K9 because you don't hear him. You don't he died sort of pre all the sort of explosion of media, didn't he? So. Yeah, I think that's it's only about 4 minutes, 5 minutes or something, isn't it? But it's a sweet little interview, I think. And see, that's positive. I didn't say anything bad about that, did I?
I'm waiting for it. It's like Columbo. Just one more thing. Actually.
However, the day after.
And of course, we get the definitive. Now that we finally might actually be at a definitive here. I don't know if they can do this again, but we get the definitive Shada.
So can't they do it like Carrie Fisher in Star Wars, where they get a stand-in and then they computer face everyone? Is that not going to be the definitive Shada?
That's what I was talking to someone about just recently. They could deep fake Shada now. They literally could do that. All they'd have to do is get them to mime to the voices that they've already done, and have someone riding around the streets of Cambridge as dressed as Chris Parsons, and then just deep fake put his face on, and then all they need is a laboratory set and something rather else. We could have it again.
If there's a Doctor Who fan out there that's got a lot of money and a lot of time, there's your project.
Oh, hang on, Ian's still there, isn't he? If he hasn't bankrupted himself with his family history book.
Oh, gold, yes. Ian's still got, that's the thing, Ian's still very upset about that version of Shada that he did, and it was never released or whatever, wasn't approved of, and it's like, so yeah, I don't think that's happening anytime soon.
But I think it works better as episodes. I think
we
have it as episodes now.
Does. I'm sorry, Jason, I was just going to say, when I saw it at the BFI a couple of years ago, and then they showed it as a whole big long thing, and by the end of it, people were wanting to slit their wrists. They were like, no, too much. We need a break. We need it broken up. So I think that the episodic version of this is much better. It's how it would have gone out if it had been transmitted anyway. It wouldn't have gone out some great big long whacking movie version, So
I got to be honest, I felt a little bit like that the BFI screening of The Evil of the Daleks, because that was 7 episodes, but that's another season and we can't talk about that one.
Jason just wanted to let everyone know that he had been to the BFI.
Has he? I heard that.
Have you not been, James?
I have been.
But the
what a lot of has-beens, what a lot of them. I think we also we skipped onto the Shada there, but I love Chris's new visual effects for Nightmare of Eden. I think they're great. They're sympathetic enough to make it look like it could be 1979, but better than a lot of the shake that we had in the actual production. There's nothing they could do with visual effects to help Jennifer Lonsdale, but what can you do?
I mean, there is a charm to the original studio model effects with the shimmering spaceships. but you were right. They did it in a kind of a very sympathetic way, and I kind of like that hyperspace sort of zoom, and all the trails being left behind as the ship is dematerializing into hyperspace. So yeah, actually the effects in Destiny, the Daleks, the upgraded effects in Destiny work as well, with the models again being altered, and and the fact that they've remodulated David Goodison's voice, I think, for example. So I think again that the extra nice special effect bits have been added in, and they are quite sympathetic throughout all the stories, I think, on this release.
And with Destiny, they also added in some the noise, the sort of the Dalek noise from
Drumming in the background.
The incidental, sound things that we use for Destiny. Yeah, so that's interesting, actually, having that rather than just having a load of silence. So it works quite well, actually. Yeah, I like that.
No interview with Cassandra, though, sadly.
No, she's still missing in action.
If you're out there watching Cassandra, capital letters, no surname, get in touch. We'd love to see the missing Movellen. Still nothing from Claire Jenkins. We've done shout outs, but she is not putting anything in the comments.
Oh.
So I think we might have exhausted all the new material on here, unless anyone's thinking of anything exotic. It's nice, always nice, the sort of BBC sort of little minuets, and where you get Lalla on Wogan, not literally, and things like that. They're always quite sweet. Barbara Woodhouse with K9 and stuff. They're sort of evocative of the era, I think, in some ways, aren't they? That's how the television was. It is funny. Lalla seems very happy on Swap Shop, doesn't she? She seems less enjoying. She seems to be enjoying Aspel slightly less. Maybe because it's the same questions and she's a bit bored with them by that point. It's like, I think all of them ask her whether she's really called Lalla, don't they? And there's that moment of, oh, this again. So thrilled.
I did enjoy the visual effects feature on the Creature from the Pit. So we did talk, they did have a piece behind the scenes on some of the difficulty in studio with the Erato prop. I mean, of course, that is always the stuff of some good jokes, but I thought that was quite interesting there. And you could see that Matt Irvin didn't come out of that too well at the time. When you see the behind the scenes stuff where they had a big inquest after the story had been filmed. And I found that quite interesting, seeing a little bit behind the scenes as to some of the difficulties that they had. Now, I wasn't sure whether that was on the original release, but I definitely enjoyed rewatching that one if it was.
Did you have a poster of the Creature from the Pit next to the Axon Eye when you were a child, or
no? I was just the Axon Eye for me.
He had the action figure.
Oh, his green pillow. I mean, there are lots of like nice features that brought back. The Nick Pegg's Graham Williams documentary is really good. Not future-proofed in HD, alas, but it is a lovely documentary, and I can see why they wouldn't bother trying to redo, because I think it's fairly definitive.
That's the beauty of these box sets, though, isn't it? That there's something there for every fan, realistically. If you're behind the scenes, person who likes the stuff behind the scenes and seeing all the production notes come up on screen, and I actually pause and read all the production notes when you get the sort of handwritten stuff, because I like to see all the stuff behind the scenes. Or if you want the behind the sofa stuff, so you want the star, the Turns take on it, or if you just want to watch the the Tom Baker, there is literally something for everyone. And that's what I kind of like about these definitive collection boxes, is that there is a lot of thought that goes into them, and not everything works on them. And obviously they are drawing on an archive of DVD releases and all sorts of stuff that they've got tucked away there. But the bringing it together of them, I think, works. And I think, I'm looking forward desperately to a black and white box set coming out. That would be really, really nice. But, I certainly enjoy these and look forward to the releases when they come out.
Yeah, I think it's good that they are making an effort. I mean, they have to, because of the fact that essentially most of us are buying all these things for the third time after video and DVD. But at least they're trying their best to fill each disc with other stuff besides what they've ported over from the DVD releases. So at least, you know, you think, oh, we've got a new bit here, whether it's newly filmed or whether it's some old archive footage, as Paul was saying, like off, you know, Wogan or Aspel or whatever. So it's nice to see all these sort of things from the time. But unfortunately, of course, you get the same old detractors online. I read something just the other day where someone said, I'm very upset about this new box set. They didn't even bother to do a documentary on the Horns of Nimon. They said they were going to do new documentaries for all the stories, blah, blah, blah. And I think, well, the problem is, take for example, Horns of Nimon, pretty much most of the cast are dead. The director's dead, but, you know, so there's not really a lot you could do with, if you wanted to do a new documentary on the Horns of Nimon and interview, you know, like 1 or 2 people, that they obviously just thought, well, it's not really worth it. But unfortunately, you know, people are going to have a mind. So what can you do?
I think it's nice that it is that sort of collection of lots of different things. It's sort of pulling it together from lots of different sources, whether it's previous releases or, like you say, archive that's never really been released. And I just like the fact that it's all in that sort of contained box, and you can, like you say, because I've watched the episodes, I tend to just go straight into the extras, and then you find these sort of little nuggets for 2 minutes a clip. I watched the swap shop bit as well, and it takes you back to you know, to when you were watching it when you were a kid, and so I like all those little things. I like being surprised by, or let's have a look at the next. Oh, I didn't realize that. So I do like that, and you realistically can't do a documentary on everything, but I think the ones that they do tend to sort of pick and choose which stories they're going to focus on, and I think they choose more or less well on those documentaries.
I slightly feel.
Go on.
Here I go. I slightly feel that season 17 is a bit of a cheapo release compared to some of the others, and I feel, I think honestly, it's either the money they've had hasn't been spent in the right places, or they haven't spent as much money. If you look at the Behind the Sofa, for instance, season 24, you had Peter, Janet, Matthew, and Sarah as one setup, Sylvester, Sophie, Bonnie as another setup, and Colin and Michael Jason as the other setup. That's not cheap, folks. I'm not saying that what they had here was cheap. What I'm saying is it was not as expensive as that lineup for that setting. Whether they then blew their budget getting Tom to sit in a chair and give us some unrelated anecdotes about anything else, I don't know. Or the commentaries. I get that these things, you spend the money on one place and you've got to make the money back somewhere else. I get that. It's difficult because different seasons are going to lend themselves to this so much better than others, aren't they? So season 24 has got like everything that anyone burped on set is there, and it's remastered in HD, and you can roll with it, and it's nearer the time, so you haven't got a Horns of Nimon situation where it's like there's only 3 of them left to talk to. You can get everyone from Delta and the Bannermen back to have a chat, essentially. But I just felt that looking at it, when you do that, when you get that sort of breakdown, it's like a new documentary, it's like there isn't an awful lot on here that's screaming to me, wow, this is exciting and new. Like there's more exciting things of season 22 with the location stuff that they're doing and stuff like that. And I think that's a bigger pull, isn't it? If you're doing something like that with Colin and Nicola, that's a thing. Whereas I suppose by the same token, they're also slightly held back on doing anything because they can't do Tom and Lalla because they're not going to do it. Well, you know, so I get the limitations of it, and as the producer vibe of the limitations of you ideally say, well, let's have Tom and I watch this, or let's do this, but there's not an awful lot you can do. And Shada, there's not a lot of new you can do because it's been out so many bloody times. Every time it's come out, it's had to have a new extra. So they've gone around the locations, they've interviewed everyone about it. It's kind of like, what the heck would you do to make a new Shada feature? It's like it's sort of done. So it's difficult because it's nice to have it out. It's nice to have it as a set, but it feels slightly cheaper.
Do you think if for example, Lalla had done a new interview, that would have, because obviously that's one of the sort of the main features again, but it's an archive interview that she did, a number of years ago. Do you feel that if they'd managed to persuade her back to do a more up to date one, that would have helped? Because I know they wouldn't have done one together, but we've got Tom Talks, and then would you have found it better if there was a Lalla Talks as well?
I guess they'd have wanted to do the Matthew Sweet thing, wouldn't they? I suppose, because they wouldn't have done. Because if you do just another interview, what do you remember from Destiny Daleks? The anecdotes aren't going to be any different to what you get. I suppose that's what they wanted to do, and that's not what it could still happen. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think necessarily it's just the lack of a new interview with Lalla that distressed me on this. It's just that it doesn't feel, and it's gonna. I mean, there are gonna inevitably. I'm not digging a hole, but there's inevitably going to be sets like this. And I think when season 7 comes up, I can't imagine there's going to be an awful lot that anyone can really add to that. I mean, you might be able to do tributes to Derek Sherwin or Terrence Dix or something, and I guess that's your hero documentary for the year. But I mean, extras wise, and imagine it's pretty heavily covered now because Spearhead's been out more times than my tuppence, and Ambassador's death's been quite recent. I think there are going to be seasons a bit like 17, I guess, where just by their nature they're not going to have season 3, folks.
Well, I mean, the fact that when we hopefully finally get seasons 1 to 6, they're really going to struggle to find new footage of anything or new interviews and so forth with any of the people that are still about that they can do, and certainly at least with the more recent ones, like your McCoy ones, your Colin ones, your Davison ones, you've still got a lot of existing behind the scenes footage and deleted scenes or whatever. But for those ones, that's really going to be a struggle.
I can't wait for the comments of people complaining that they haven't, tracked down William Hartnell for an interview for the new Blu-ray box set.
Yeah, ironically, I guess with having Caroline and Caroline and Maureen watching each other's stories for season 2, there's actually probably more validation in that for the sofa to an extent, because I think that's a kind of. That's you're watching what your predecessor did that you might not have done then, and they're watching what happened afterwards, and you can react to how was it for you, and I think that's when Behind the Sofa can work. That's why Behind the Sofa with Sylvester, Bonnie, and Sophie sort of works, because Sophie hadn't watched Bonnie stuff, and Bonnie, it's kind of like, oh crikey, that's what it was like for you, or this was like, and I think that's when it works best, rather than just being like, oh well, who's this and what's this monster. And
they'll have been banking some of this as they've gone along the way, though, Ben, I would have thought.
Yeah.
So I think the chances of us getting, some new interviews and some new retrospectives on some of the early black and white collections when they come out, I think it's quite, we're going to get some new bits and bobs there, I'm sure.
Well, I do hope they do something for Keys and Mariners, because that was the poorest of the original release DVD things, that they didn't have anything. They did at the time. There was actually still a few people about from the production that they maybe could have. But I think, do you remember at the time they were doing sort of they're called budget releases? Or
budget releases, yes, yeah, I remember.
That fell under that. And I think Keys and Mariners' extras was a photo gallery and something to do with like someone talking about, oh, here's the sets of the Keys and Mariners. And that was it. It had nothing else on it, or it had a commentary, yes, but no documentary, no nothing. And it's like, wow. So I hope
that'll be the one where they do an extended Behind the Sofa, and they do make them watch every episode. Live reaction.
Get a history of wetsuits, it'd be golden.
Absolutely.
So I think we are drawing to a conclusion here, aren't we? It is the season 17 collection. Look, please be definite, folks. Is it a hit, a miss, or a maybe? 3 options there. Hit, miss.
So we're not allowed to do this then?
No, because you're not hailing a taxi after a drunken night out in Cardiff Bay. Who's going first then?
Okay, I'll go first then. So for me, this was a box of delights, I've got to say, this release. And whilst there was something in here for everyone, I think there was some really nice new additional documentaries and interviews that had not been seen before. I liked Tom Talks. I did like the interview. I think all the interviews on here worked really well. The Bob Baker one in particular, I think, a very apt interview, I suppose, given that we lost him not so long ago, but nice to see. So yeah, for me, the behind the sofa bits were good. So this is a definite, because I like the collection releases anyway. I'm not hailing a taxi from the Bay. That's a definite hit from me.
That's a blue thumb, that is. James, where are you at on the collection set?
I love these. I love the Blu-ray releases. There's just so many things that you can delve into. I mean, I as I've said, I will watch the behind the sofas first, and then I will pick out documentaries, and then sort of spend some time going through all the other little bit of extras on there. I think there's maybe not as much content as on some of the other releases, but I still think what we got was really nice, and I really appreciated the new stuff and the Bob Baker and the Tom Talks as well. So it is a hit, a thumbs up from me.
That's 2 up. I'm not doing the JNT line. Ben?
Yeah, I enjoyed this. This is that they did make an effort. I know, as people have said, there's maybe not as much stuff on here as perhaps could have been, but I do think they made the effort to put on as much as they possibly could. Certainly, the standout interviews are the Tom Talks, the Bob Baker one, some of the extra bits and pieces that they found of various TV appearances, and yeah, but I think it's good, considering personally this is my least favorite Tom season, and I still enjoyed it. I think it was really good, and it was nice to watch the stories again. So yes, it's a thumbs up from me. Hey.
He's given a thumbs up on his last ever appearance on a Talking About video.
Oh, your face. Oh,
stop the song. What is that? His least favorite. You've seen Underworld. You've seen The Leisure Hive. Anyway, dead to me now.
Amen.
I think we should roll the credits silent now, like Earthshock.
just with the box set.
I mean, this season contains.
Actually, we can have my broken box set, and the credits can roll over that.
This season contains one of the very best Doctor Who stories of all time.
Not one of, the.
Yeah, City of Death is amazing, without a doubt, definitely.
Oh, you were talking about Horns of Nimon then.
We gave Horns of Nimon quite a good score, I think, when we did this. I mean, we were up in the high 20s on that. But this, I mean, if we could have given more than 10 a piece on this, on City of Death, we would have done so.
We are not amused. We are not amused.
Has the probationary period finished yet?
I think there might be some nifty editing on this, and someone's going to disappear from it. It's like, did he? No, he's gone. He's gone. Yeah, it's like we'll see him animated later on.
And Ben, who is this Ben? I don't know.
Talking about, he's gone from all of them now. The flux has taken him. Okay, well, I do you know what? Because I'd love to be positive in 2022. I season 17, I love season 17, I love.
Good.
This box set though, do you know what? I think if you hadn't got the DVDs or the VHS or whatever you want to have it on, I haven't been having Jason's drink, I swear. I think if you hadn't got the DVDs, this is a sort of like a must. You should, because there's lots of lovely stuff around it. You got the DVDs. I don't know if there's a big enough leap for this to say, other than space, you can compact it down a bit. That to say, yeah, this is amazing because there's this. And like actually a lot of the good stuff, a lot of the features, I say like the Graham Williams, a lot of the stuff has already been out there. And we've detailed what I think, people could have had better, and I understand the limitations on it and all that stuff. But I mean, if it's going cheap and you haven't got it, go for it. I don't think it's one that you need to rush out and buy, because there is nothing so earth-shattering in this. There's nothing amazingly new. Tom doing a few anecdotes, Tom talks. You can go on YouTube and there are 100 Tom interviews where he's doing crazy anecdotes, and that's fine. It's lovely, but I just don't think there's anything saying this is a £50, $43.99 Blu-ray set that you must own. So for me, I think it's a little bit of a miss, actually.
Oh.
But I mean, get it if you need the set. Get it if you haven't got the DVDs. But I don't think there's anything on this set that's new that has enhanced my love for season 17. It's just a bit kind of like.
Saying that about your favourite season?
No, I'm not saying about my favourite season. I'm saying about the iteration of the release of my favourite season.
Were your expectations, because it is your favourite season, were your expectations?
I don't know if it is my favourite season.
Yes.
I'm about to say that I don't know if it is my favourite season. I don't know whether I'm going along with everyone telling me that's what it is. Season
18 is his favourite.
Oh, he had nothing but good to say about 18 when we reviewed that.
I know.
When I can't sleep at night, I just think back to 18 going into 19. We were celebrating 40 years of Castroval the other day. It's like the Ovaltine of Doctor Who. So yes, I mean, haters gonna hate, and I don't hate it, and I understand the limitations of producing these things and making new things about a show that's 40 years old and all that stuff. Absolutely down the line, I understand all that, but I don't feel that there's anything wow that I've gone, oh my god, that's amazing. I loved seeing that feature. I love seeing that, because a lot of the stuff's already been out there, and I'm sorry for that.
I think our viewer is aware that we will never always agree about everything.
It will be boring.
Well, we're united about Ben leaving, though, aren't we? And now that there are graphic signs at home, folks. Graphic signs. Vulgar. Well, thank you very much, Jason and James.
A pleasure as always.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose some kind of thanks to Ben in his final appearance.
Who's that?
I think he's the Adrix, your Nissa and Tegan.
That makes Jason Tegan.
Oh no, Jason would totally be Nissa. He'd be the one dropping down to his negligee before he left. I've got a tummy ache. I've got to take my clothes off.
You know me too well. This is the problem.
Oh, anyway, well, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you, viewer. And we shall see you again soon.